So, 50 years ago, Blue Peter held a competition inviting children to design inventions that they thought would be made by the year 2000. And some entries were things we still can't imagine, including an underwater city in a submarine.
Now, one young boy drew what ended up becoming part of our everyday life. You're probably seeing us on one now, a flat-screen TV. It wasn't introduced until the late 90s, though. Take a look at some of those competition entries.
Hello, and today's the day when we're announcing the results for our Ideas for the Year 2000 competition.
Robbery-proof door. The door reacts to the voice of the person who is allowed to go through the door, and nobody else.
A space wallet for the year 2000. Some paper money up here. It's European money. It's marked EMU, European Monetary Unit. Instead of having half a dozen countries with half a dozen different sorts of money, you just have one set of money.
It's an underwater city which includes a nuclear power plant to supply energy, a solar reflector system, and solar collecting discs for extra economical power.
At school today, we were the first children to try out the new teaching computer. It was a great fun because all we had to do was press a button and then wait for the lessons to come up.
New flat-screen television set that can be viewed from two sides at once by the two people, and you can probably see there that they're wearing earplugs so they don't disturb anybody else. Yeah.
But it's a flat screen, is that?
Yes.
Is that practical?
Oh, yes, they're developing it now. Very early stage.
Very clever. We've spoken to the winner of the under-11s category, Stephen Bostock. He's not under 11 now, obviously. He imagined a flat-screen TV which could be watched on both sides. That's the next step. It also has elements of the World Wide Web integrated into it. This is 2 decades before that became a reality. He told us what he could remember from the competition.
When the programme came on, I was looking at all the pictures in the background of the studio and thinking, well, I can't see mine there, I'm not going to get anywhere. And then when they announced it, I just couldn't believe it. It was just an amazing experience to win it. It made me famous for a week in the local area.
Yeah, and we're still talking about it now, which is the point, isn't it? We're joined by former Blue Peter presenter Peter Purves this morning. Morning to you, Peter. Lovely to see you there.
Morning, Charlie. Morning, Naga.
Lovely to see you. Tom Cheesewright is with us, who's a tech expert here in the studio. Morning, Tom. So, Peter, just take us back to that time, 50 years ago, and you get all these ideas coming in. They were brilliant ideas, weren't they?
Well, some of them were quite extraordinary, and Stephen Bostock's winning entry, that was in the oldest age group, because I think the competition always had at least 3 different age groups. So there were 3 winners down the line. But no, that was extraordinary because, as James Burke said, I think, at the time, that flat screen technology had just started to be worked on. I mean, it wasn't a viable proposition. And at that time, technology had not advanced greatly. I mean, I remember, and it was probably the same year, I demonstrated the first telephone that you could take outside and move around and ring people elsewhere. It was a great big haversack you had around your neck, and you had an ordinary kind of old-fashioned telephone attached to it, and you could make calls. And this was extraordinary. It was groundbreaking, and we know where that's all gone. So it really was exceptional that he could come up with something that really was not within the range, I would have thought, of someone of his age to even understand the possibility. I mean, televisions back in the day, and I'm sure you both remember, Charlie and Naga, that, I mean, they were big. They had great depth to them because they had this cathode ray tube inside. And we're only about 5 years on from colour television being universal across the BBC, with the line system changing to 625. People watching now who weren't born then won't even know what I'm talking about. All sorts of wonderful technology.
I must say, Peter, you've lost half of our production team when it came to that technical stuff. Honestly, it was just straight over their heads. We've got an applied futurist. You know, Tom, I'm looking at this list because Peter was saying, you know, there were 3 categories. So Stephen won with the flat-screen TV. For 8 to 10-year-olds, the winning invention was a dishwasher and a dish-making machine, which washes dishes and makes new ones. Even better. The 7-year-olds, 7 and unders, the first prize was a cloud, or the one which won first prize, a cloud blower which takes water from an area with floods and delivers it to an area with droughts. How prophetic.
Absolutely. And what's really interesting about these is that it demonstrates that children have no boundaries. It's much harder in my career. The older you get and the more you're working with people who know too much almost, the harder it is to get them to think outside the box, to imagine these unbelievable possibilities. And yet children, without knowing the technology, without understanding what's really possible, they think about what we need and they have these unbounded imaginations and come up with these incredible ideas, which have proven to be prophetic.
But still things, the brilliant ideas, like this cloud blower, taking water, you know, from flooded areas to areas with droughts. We need that right now, but even to recognise that that would be something that would be needed because the world's in balance, kind of thing, the Earth's in balance. And that's kind of how you go about trying to invent something. You take a look at the obvious, not almost the bizarre.
I always say friction starts fires. You know, if you bump up against a problem that you can't solve, that's what triggers that entrepreneurial instinct, that innovation instinct to try and solve a problem. And so I'm not quite sure what problem Stephen was trying to solve with the two-sided television. Maybe, you know, people wanting to watch different things in their household. But absolutely, you recognise these problems, and without being constricted in terms of what's possible, you come up with solutions.
It's the age-old problem, always arguing over the remote. That's probably what triggered it.
Peter, you know, it's so true what you're saying before, like 50... So we're talking about 50 years ago, and your programme, you were demonstrating technology, as you said a moment ago, but at the same time, you were using sticky-back plastic in the studio, weren't you? So it was kind of the complete crossover of old and new, in a way.
Well, I suppose it was. I mean, we used whatever was available at the time. And, I mean, sticky-back plastic was, I think, we had to say that because Fablon was a trade name and that was the product. So, I mean, things change, and they change very quickly. Once the technology starts to advance, the increase in the technical ability is just amazing. I can barely believe how it was then. I mean, we worked in the days of black and white television with the very old type cameras. Nothing like what you have in the studio today with your remote control and everything. It's quite extraordinary, and I find it hard to believe that it's all happened in my lifetime.
Yes, it is amazing. Look at us chatting, and you're in your front room, and we're chatting, and we're on the telly. It is amazing, isn't it, Tom? You know, we take things for granted these days.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
the fact that we are connected, over great distances with no trouble at all.
Yeah. Peter, lovely to see you. Thank you so much for reminiscing with us a little bit. Thank you very much.
Welcome.
And Tom, thank you so much as well. Tom Cheesewright, thank you. What do you wish you'd invented?
Oh, something really simple like paper clips.
You'd have made a fortune.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Thanks.